Okay, so have you ever heard of this, this idea of a digital prison?
Yeah, it sounds kind of like something added, like a dystopian novel, right?
Totally. But that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at this article. It's from Bitcoin University.
Oh, I've seen that one floating around.
Yeah, it's called The Coming Digital Prison in CBDCs. And
It's a bit of a heavy read.
it's intense. It basically argues that governments are like laying the groundwork for this system where they can control our lives like we've never seen before.
Yeah, it definitely gets you thinking.
For sure. So, like, one of the first things the article talks about is how they would actually build this digital prison. They mention things like banning firearms, like, completely, and then limiting free speech. Like, they talk about these safe spaces, but it seems like it goes way beyond that.
Yeah, and then there's the whole thing about digital IDs, right? Like
Yeah.
having all of your personal information in one place, that's a pretty big deal.
Huge. And then on top of that, they bring up social credit scores, which, I mean, we've all heard about, but the way they describe it, it's like it can be used to reward you if you're doing what they want, but punish you if you step out of line.
Right. So it becomes a tool to manipulate behavior, essentially. Like if
Yes.
you don't toe the line, you could be cut off from certain services or privileges. And it's not like this is a completely new concept, right? We've seen similar tactics used throughout history, even without all the fancy technology we have today.
Oh, absolutely. Think about like the surveillance states in the past. But now imagine that, but with like algorithms and AI and constant data collection. It's a whole other level.
It's like taking those historical examples and putting them on steroids.
Exactly. And that's where the article brings in CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies.
Ah, yes. The digital prison's financial arm.
They make it seem like CBDCs are a key piece of this whole system. I get that they're digital, like using your debit card or whatever, but what makes CBDCs so different from just using like regular digital banking?
Well, think about it like this. With traditional banking, you have a degree of privacy. Your bank statements are, for the most part, between you and your bank. But with CBDCs, the government could potentially see every single transaction you make.
Mhm.
Every coffee, every book, well, you get the idea.
So like if I buy a pizza at 2 a.m., they'd know about it. That's a little creepy.
It's definitely a concern. The article highlights a bunch of possibilities that are kind of unsettling, like the government being able to track all your purchases, freeze your funds instantly if they want to, or even set expiration dates on your money to force you to spend it.
Expiration dates on money, that's wild.
Right, and it gets even crazier. They suggest that your spending could be restricted based on your social credit score. Imagine being denied a cup of coffee because your score took a hit for something you said online.
Okay, that's just messed up. I mean, I've heard about those stories coming out of China with their digital yuan and the social credit system.
Hmm.
People being denied basic services because their score is too low. It sounds like something out of a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, and that's a real-world example of how CBDCs can be used. They've linked the digital yuan with their social credit system, and we're seeing instances where people are denied access to transportation, certain businesses, even toilet paper, based on their score.
Toilet paper. Seriously.
Seriously. And it ties into their Skynet surveillance system, too. They use AI and cameras to automatically issue fines for things like jaywalking, littering, even not sorting your trash properly,
So it's like Big Brother on autopilot.
pretty much. And it's not just China that's heading in this direction. The article points out that Europe is also making moves towards digital control with initiatives like the digital euro and a unified digital ID for all EU residents.
Yeah, that a digital ID thing is pretty concerning. Having all your information in one place like that, it just feels like it makes it that much easier for someone to access and control it.
Exactly. The article argues that the push for this unified digital identity in Europe, along with increasing online censorship and the planned launch of the digital euro in 2025, shows that this isn't just a Chinese phenomenon. It's a global trend we need to be paying attention to.
So if these concerns are valid, who's driving this whole thing? Like, who are the people behind this push for digital control? The article really goes after people like Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank. They even bring up her past legal issues.
They paint her as like the poster child for this whole digital control agenda.
Yeah. They claim figures like her are pushing CBDCs as this like super convenient solution while potentially eroding our financial freedoms. Like, hey, look how easy this is. But then behind the
Wow.
scenes, they're taking away our control.
Right, it's like the classic bait and switch. I think it's important to look beyond just individual figures, though. It's bigger than just one person. We need to focus on the bigger picture, the systemic forces at play. Like, what role does technology play in this potential power shift between governments and citizens? Are we thinking critically enough about the long-term consequences of all this? These are the questions we should be asking ourselves.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, like we're making choices now that could have huge implications down the road.
Absolutely. We need to be having these conversations, figuring out what kind of future we want to build.
So we've been talking about this digital prison, and it's kind of a downer, right? But the article doesn't just leave us hanging. They actually offer some ways people might, like, resist or work around these systems if they become a reality.
Yeah, there's a whole section on that. Like, what if CBDCs do become the main form of money? How could people still have some control over their finances? It's pretty fascinating, actually. One idea they propose is using physical goods to trade Bitcoin, like almost a modern barter system.
Interesting. I'm trying to picture how that would actually work.
Okay, so let's say you want to buy Bitcoin, but you can only use CBDCs, right? So what you could do is buy something tangible with your CBDC, like gold or silver, something that holds its value, and then trade that physical asset for Bitcoin.
So you're basically using real-world goods to sidestep the digital limitations, kind of like going off the grid, financially speaking. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Exactly. And the article also mentions the possibility of like underground markets popping up for Bitcoin, places where people can trade outside of the government's control.
Oh, yeah, like a digital black market. I mean, it makes sense. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? People are always going to find ways to get around systems that feel oppressive. We've seen it throughout history with things like prohibition or black markets for restricted goods.
It's human nature, I guess. We always find a way.
So we keep coming back to this clash between CBDCs and Bitcoin. It's like they represent two totally different visions of the future.
Yeah, it's like this fundamental philosophical difference. CBDCs are all about centralization. All the controls in the hands of governments and institutions. Sure, they might offer some benefits like increased efficiency or security, but at what cost? It could mean sacrificing a lot of our privacy and individual autonomy.
Right. Whereas Bitcoin is like the complete opposite. It's decentralized, taking power away from those central authorities and giving it back to individuals. It's about freedom and control over your own money.
Okay, so let's say this digital prison actually happens.
Yeah.
Like, what would that look like in our daily lives? How would it actually affect us?
Well, imagine a world where the government can see every single financial transaction you make. It would be incredibly difficult to do anything anonymously. Like, let's say you wanted to donate to a cause that the government doesn't support. Would you be comfortable doing that, knowing that it could be tracked, that it could potentially be used against you?
That's a chilling thought. It's like you'd always be looking over your shoulder wondering who's watching. It could lead to so much self-censorship. Yeah, you'd constantly be second-guessing yourself, worried about the potential consequences of your actions. And it wouldn't just affect political dissent either. It could impact all aspects of our lives. They could use our spending habits to profile us, target us with advertising, even deny us access to certain services.
Yeah.
It's a level of surveillance that I think a lot of people would find pretty disturbing.
It's like living under a microscope. You're constantly being scrutinized, and there's no escape because it's all digital.
It's definitely a possibility that we need to consider. I mean, no one knows for sure what the future holds, but it's important to be aware of the potential risks. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. I think it's important to remember that we have a say in shaping the future. The decisions we make today, both individually and collectively, will determine what that future looks like.
So we've been talking about this digital prison idea and the role of CBDCs, and it's a lot to take in, honestly.
It is. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, there's this one last point from the article that really stuck with me.
Okay, what's that?
Well, they warn that this whole push for digital control, it could really ramp up like right after the next U.S. election cycle.
Oh, wow. So no matter who wins, it could get worse.
Yeah.
That's a pretty scary thought. Like, they could use the outcome, to justify even more restrictions on our freedom.
Exactly. It makes it feel so much more real. Like, this isn't just a theoretical debate. It's something that could actually happen, like, right around the corner. So it's like a wake-up call, right? This is happening, so we need to pay attention. What can we even do? How do we prepare for a future like that, especially if we really value things like financial privacy and freedom?
Well, I think the first step is education. The more you understand about all of this, like about Bitcoin, CBDCs, digital privacy, the better equipped you'll be to make good choices.
Mhm.
Don't just take things at face value. Do your own research, question what you're hearing, and form your own opinions.
So step one, get informed. Don't just passively consume information, but go out and actively look for it. But what about beyond learning? What are some actual steps people can take?
It's also really important to talk about these things with the people around you. Like, have these conversations with your friends, family, colleagues. Share what you're learning and get them thinking critically about these issues too. The more people who are aware and engaged, the more likely we are to find solutions that actually protect our rights and freedoms.
I like that a lot. It's about starting a conversation, not just, lecturing people.
Mm.
We need to be curious and open to hearing different perspectives. I mean, this can all feel really overwhelming. But is there any reason to be hopeful amidst all this digital prison talk?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are so many brilliant people out there working on solutions,
Yeah.
building decentralized platforms, advocating for more transparency and accountability. This isn't about like rejecting technology altogether. It's about shaping it in a way that actually serves humanity.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive, right? We can choose to just be passengers on this tech roller coaster, or we can try to steer it in a direction that benefits everyone.
Exactly. It all comes down to making informed choices, staying engaged, and working together to build the kind of future we actually want to see.
Okay, so to wrap up today's deep dive, we explored this concept of a digital prison and the potential role of CBDCs. We even talked about some ways people might be able to resist, if things go in that direction.
We covered some heavy topics today, but hopefully it gets you thinking and asking some important questions.
For sure. And remember, the future isn't set in stone. What we do today shapes what tomorrow looks like. So stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, stay hopeful.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And if you're interested in learning more, we'll share some links to additional resources in the show notes. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping the future you want to see. Until next time.